Coming off a win versus Iowa, the Indiana Hoosiers are off to an historic start in 2025, one that we haven't seen in 30 plus years.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Well, lots to get to on today's show. Some recruiting updates with our man, Brian Smith, host of the Portal Podcast. He joined us and talks about some of the guys who have been on campus for Indiana over the past couple of weeks and how the Hoosiers can start to land some of the biggest talent in the country. Plus, just some generic updates for Indiana football, a transfer wide receiver leaving the program, one that came in a year ago and is going to leave Indiana. Plus, we now know the kickoff time for Indiana versus Oregon. We'll talk about that, the significance that is, and how the Hoosiers can try to pull off the upset. But we start today's show with the idea and a fact, really, that the Indiana Hoosiers and Curt Cignetti are off to a historic start in the year 2025. I have three things that I want to go over with you today that show why the Hoosiers are off to such a great start and why I'm considering it historic. We'll start with the one that just talks about the team and really the program as a whole and the longevity that the Hoosiers have been playing football. I'm sure you've seen it by now, but the stat and the fact is that Indiana football is off to a 5-0 start in back-to-back seasons for the first time in program history. Think about that for just a moment. The Indiana football Hoosiers are off to a 5-0 start in back-to-back seasons for the first time ever. That's historic, ladies and gentlemen. That's a big deal, folks. And I know that there are some people that may laugh at that and say, 5-0, that's it? This is the first time you've ever gone 5-0 2 years in a row? That's the best you can do? That's what you're going to bump your chest about and be all excited about? Heck yeah, we are. Absolutely. It shows that Indiana football is legit. It shows that Curt Cignetti knows what he's doing. And I know that the non-conference games help you kind of get kickstarted in that, sure. But back-to-back 5-0 starts for this Indiana football program is a big deal, and I think people need to be talking about that more. It shows that what you did up to this point historically truly were one-hit wonders. That's what that says, because Indiana's had good seasons here and there. You've had exciting seasons. You've had bowl game appearances and things like that, but what you're watching right now simply has never happened for us in Bloomington on the football field. And it truly is historic. You got to that 5-0 start this year because you went on the road and beat Iowa at Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City, a place that you had not won before this past weekend in almost 18 years, a place that you had not won since September 29th of 2007. You went there in 2021. It did not go well. You went there in 2014, and it did not go well. You also went there in 2011, and it did not go well. And you went there in 2009, and it did not go well. But the year you went in 2007, you walked away with a 38-20 victory, and you have yet to win a game there until this past weekend. Now, there are some years in there that, of course, you didn't play and you only played them in Bloomington and things like that. But historically, it's a rivalry or air quotes for rivalry, I guess, one that's dominated by Iowa, 46-29 as of this weekend's results. But you broke a streak of almost 18 years. That's historic for this Indiana football program, and that should be celebrated. So there's two that show that this start in 2025 is one that we should be talking about more. Others outside of Indiana should be talking about this more. But then there was a stat that I saw on social media over the weekend, and it's a couple of days old. So if you've seen this, just bear with me here because it's fantastic. It's an incredible stat that I myself did not come up with, and I'm happy to give credit to Greg Harvey. His X handle is between the nums, N-U-M-S. He's a statistical guy, does fantastic work. Greg Harvey came up with this stat. I want you to listen to this. So we just talked about Indiana on their first 5-0 back-to-back starts in program history, and the fact that you just broke an 18-year winless streak in Iowa City. Those are two great points, and we could stop right there. My argument would be made. But how about this stat from Greg Harvey? Here is the list of teams in the last 30 years at the FBS level to have 1,300 passing yards, 1,300 rushing yards, and 2 or fewer turnovers through the first 5 games of the season. I'll say it again. Here is the list of teams in the last 30 years to have 1,300 passing yards, 1,300 rushing yards, and 2 or fewer turnovers through the first 5 games of the season. The list of teams is the 2025 Indiana Hoosiers. That's it. This is the only team in the last 30 years of FBS football to achieve 1,300 passing yards, 1,300 rushing yards, and turn the ball over 2 or less times. Do you understand how incredible that is? And shout out again to Greg Harvey, between the nums, N-U-M-S on X. Go give him a follow, shout him out, and we appreciate that stat, and hopefully he's cool with me using that because, folks, that's unbelievable to think about. The fact that in the last 30 years, this Indiana team offensively is off to one of the best starts we've ever seen. And yet, that's also including the Iowa game where you really didn't play your best at all. But you found a way to get it done, and you're still doing things that the history books haven't seen in quite some time. This is an exciting era of Indiana football. That doesn't even include what the defense has been up to. The fact that they are shutting everyone down, stopping everything that's in front of them, runs, passes, special teams, you name it, they got it. This Indiana team is different. And the fact that you're 5-0 with 2 nice wins and you're dominating people on both sides of the football, I'd say that's historic. It's historic for Indiana. It's historic for the Big Ten. And it's historic for college football. And Curt Cignetti and his staff deserve all the credit in the world. And the players on this team deserve the respect from those in the national media, not just us that cover Indiana on a daily, but everybody in the country needs to take their blinders off, take their glasses that they refuse to pay attention to Indiana with, take those off, and let's start accepting that this is an Indiana of the past. The Hoosiers are for real. And the Hoosiers, I hate to tell some people this because they're not going to be happy, but this version of the Indiana Hoosiers on the football field, it's here to stay. All right, we continue on with a Locked On Hoosiers episode here in just a moment. We'll give you some updates around the Indiana football program, a kickoff time between Indiana and Oregon, a top 10 matchup next week in Eugene. I'll tell you why the kickoff time is advantageous for the Indiana Hoosiers. Plus, you do lose a receiver to the transfer portal in midseason. Welcome to college football in 2025. We talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly known as Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Q is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or on your computer, so no more carrying 2 phones for relying on a landline. So if you are someone who has a business and you don't want to be taking calls all the time, but you can't maybe have a bunch of people answering phones, use Quo. Use what was normally or formerly known as Open Phone. Use Quo to help kind of solve some of those problems. Their built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer after-hours calls, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. So see why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started for free And get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got an existing number with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, which means no missed customers. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. And we have some updates around Indiana football before we talk to our man Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast for some recruiting updates around Indiana football. Talk about some of the biggest players that have been on campus and why Brian thinks this may not be just a one-hit thing for Indiana landing big-time talent and how they can start to compete with the big dogs of the world. But some of the updates that we have, we'll start with the transfer portal news that Indiana received on Monday. And yes, that is correct. I did say transfer portal news because, man, welcome to the era of college football in 2025, where you've got dudes that'll leave the program pretty much anytime and go anywhere that they want to. And Indiana saw one of their receivers do that on Monday. Mekhi Jackson, the transfer wide receiver, came in from Appalachian State. He used his 4 games. He decided to keep his red shirt, and he's going to leave and go somewhere else. He has announced that he intends to enter the transfer portal. Look, a guy that came in and was a part of a really big portal class, right? Over 20 guys you brought in this transfer portal cycle this last winter, spring, right? Someone that came in and I'll just kind of say it like it is. He just got kind of buried, honestly. Just got buried in a receiver room that we knew was going to be talented, but one that has really stepped up and played well in the first 5 games of the season. Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper were always going to be your go-tos. But the idea that EJ Williams has stepped up and become what he is, that was, can we say unexpected? Is that fair to say? That I don't mean that in any bad way towards EJ Williams, but we had a lot of questions preseason, right? About who it was going to be as the third wide receiver. Because again, Surratt and Cooper were always 1 and 2. The question was going to be, all right, is it EJ Williams, right? Coming back for another year. Will it be LeBron Bond? Will it be another transfer guy? Could you possibly see a tight end step up and be that third go-to option with a Riley Nowakowski or a Holden Stays? And I think you've seen what Nowakowski's involvement has been, and I would love to see it be a little bit more, if I'm being honest with you. But with Mekhi Jackson, it just didn't work, right? And unfortunately, you just kind of get lost in the mix. And so now you have an opportunity to go find somewhere else, go find a home, go find somewhere that's willing to give you a shot that maybe you could get some playing time. And I think he'll be good, but we wish him the best of luck. And this is also a room too, which people forget about, that the fact that Tyler Morris got hurt before the season, tearing his ACL, the Michigan transfer. So this room could have been even more stacked than it already is, which means Mekhi Jackson, it wasn't going to work out here. So you hate to see it. Indiana down to 8 receivers now, 7 or 8 receivers in that room. And this is not a huge loss. He's a guy that caught 3 balls for 15 yards this year. So it's one that you don't have to stress about all that much, but it is somebody that is leaving the program. He does get to keep his red shirt since he only appeared in 4 of the 5 games. So he'll get to go play and keep that year of eligibility. So that's one piece of news. The other piece of news is good news. I think it's great news, actually. And it now allows us to get even more hyped and excited for what next Saturday could be, when the Indiana Hoosiers, the top 10 Indiana Hoosiers, the 8th ranked team in the country, Indiana Hoosiers, will load up on a plane, fly cross country, and get to go see the beautiful Eugene, Oregon. And yes, it is. Oregon's a gorgeous state, man. If you've never been, I highly recommend that you go. And if this is the time you want to do it, then by all means, do it, because Oregon is an awesome state. And I hate the fact that we're going to have to go in there and make all the people upset next weekend and have to go and, kind of raid on their parade a little bit. But Indiana loads up and flies out to Eugene, taking on the Oregon Ducks, who as of right now are the 2nd ranked team in all of college football. Most of the stats and things say they're the number 1 team in the country. And with a win like they had over Penn State, I think they're close. I still give Ohio State that nod for what they did against Washington at Husky Stadium. Underrated win for the Buckeyes. But the Hoosiers and the Ducks, next Saturday, game of the week, in my opinion, 2:30 on CBS, 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern on CBS. So, a couple of things to take note of here. Middle of the afternoon. So you dodged a night game at Autzen Stadium. You dodged the extra amp, right? The extra juice that a night game brings in college football. We saw it here in Bloomington when we played Illinois. They weren't happy about a night game, and you could see why. Indiana dodges a night game at Autzen Stadium, but you're also going to be on national television. This is on CBS. Every television set in the country gets this game, and hopefully people are scrolling through and they stop and take a peek, and hopefully what they see is a really competitive football game. That's exciting to me. That's just going to make this build up even more. The promotion that this game will have, the advertising that this game will have will be remarkable. And that's exactly what Indiana wants. Folks, to go back to the historic start part of this show, think about what we're talking about here. The Indiana Hoosiers are ranked 8th in the country and will no doubt about it be the game of the week in college football. And it's so enticing, so good, and so entertaining that probably the biggest, well, I don't know, CBS and ESPN are the two biggest in college football. NBC's getting their way in there. One of the main stations, you can argue which one's the biggest, I don't care. That's not the point. One of the main broadcasting companies said, you know what? We want the Indiana Hoosiers. We want Indiana on our station in the middle of a Saturday afternoon. That's never happened before. This doesn't happen for Indiana. And a lot of you, my everydayers, know that I shy away from leaning into this part of Indiana a ton, right? The just happy to be here mentality, because I expect bigger and better things from Indiana most of the time. But sometimes you do got to just stop and smell the roses. And that's the most basic, generic, old school term, but it really is true here. Sometimes you just got to stop and smell the roses and realize the moment that you're in. There are big games next week too. Florida goes to Texas A&M. Georgia's at Auburn. Ohio State and Illinois. Alabama, Missouri. Oklahoma, Texas is next week. And yet, Indiana and Oregon, 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Indiana is a wanted product. Indiana is a seeked out product. Indiana is the product. People want to watch what's going on with Curt Cignetti and the boys. And again, I can't stress enough how awesome it is to not play this as a night game. It was never going to be the 11 a.m. kick, which is fine. Being out in Eugene, that's what, 9 a.m. local time or something like that. But you get the mid-afternoon game and have a chance to really take advantage of it. And I think the Hoosiers can. It's a tall ask, man. It really is. And we're going to talk about it as the bye week goes on and as we get into game week. Both teams coming off a bye week, by the way. So that should make this a really entertaining game, I think. But I'm just excited that the Hoosiers are on the national stage. You dodge the night game, and you have every chance to go and win this football game. And you're going to get to do it in front of the entire country. And as long as you're not blown out, you have a chance to make a really big statement. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, our man Brian Smith joins us once more as we talk some recruiting updates for Indiana football. Some big names who have been on campus the last couple of weeks and how Indiana can build on their historic start. We talk about that with Brian Smith next. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get 300 in bonus bets. Sorry about that. Get 300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Did you cash in on either one of the Monday Night Football games last night? You had the Jets-Dolphins last night you could have got in on. You had the Bengals in action last night that you could have gotten in on. And so if you missed out there, don't worry. You got Thursday Night Football. Hey, it's MLB postseason. You could jump in on that if you wanted to as well. You can do all of that right now with FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started by going to FanDuel.com. Welcome back into this Locked On crossover, Hoosiers and the Portal. He is Brian Smith, host of the Portal podcast. I'm Jacob Goins, host of Locked On Hoosiers. And we continue talking the Indiana Hoosiers, Brian, but the program as a whole, because winning games like you did against Illinois last week, you and I talked, was so big for the recruiting landscape, and some of the biggest names in the country were there to watch it. But how much does a win like this against Iowa on the road, national TV, where people started to tune in because, oh no, maybe the Hoosiers are going down, but you pull off a big win like this too? What does that do just to continue to build the rapport of this Indiana football program?
I think it helps you because the media now has to cover them seriously again. This isn't just covering Indiana from, okay, they were pretty good, but they played a crappy non-con, etc. They just beat two teams that were supposed to be good this year.
Yeah. And
they beat one of them by 53. And they had a comeback win when they, as the old saying goes, you've got to win your clunkers. And Indiana was not on its A game, especially up front on the offensive line. Iowa did a nice job, by the way. They're very well coached. They just don't have the talent they need out wide to dominate. But like Indiana ran up against it. Their coaching staff for once didn't just dominate. And again, it's Iowa's staff. That's a really good staff overall, minus the cover zero blitz there at the end. Or is it, by the way, that is just one of the worst calls I've seen in a long time. I have no idea what Parker was doing, but it's still the same deal. You have to be able to win your clunkers. That highlight, that the way they won, it wasn't a walk-off, but it's about as close as you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Come from behind on the road. Hardly anybody wins at Iowa. All those things, they can sell that to the media. That helps you in recruiting just by osmosis. And then you can get on the phone, you can text guys, you can email parents, whatever, and tell them, hey, come be a part of this. I told you before the show, and I'm steadfast with this, the key are the recruits that we're not talking about. And what I mean is literally, Indiana is trying to get into that next tier of elite kids. This is how you get there.
Is that possible? I mean, is Indiana in a spot to actually make that happen? Because we've talked before, and it's still true that you have an athletic director and a president that are buying into Indiana football, right, with this new era of just pure NIL, plus the revenue sharing idea. And we've got a somewhat of an idea of what Indiana's doing revenue share wise, but they're putting money into football. So is it an accurate assumption that the Hoosiers can get on that next level of recruiting? And then maybe what do you think that is, Brian?
Well, there's two more levels. There's we can get some 4 stars, and then it's your coaches are running into Kirby Smart all the time on the recruiting trail. Those are the two, yeah. That's when your coach is going around in a helicopter all the time. It's a different level. There's only so many coaches that are doing that. But Kirby doesn't fly with us. Okay, it's all different.
Yeah.
To get into that level, you got to win the games sometimes at Penn State and Oregon. To get it, they got to win one of those games, just straight up. Right now, I'm not betting on the Oregon game because that's my pick to win the national title. If it's not Ohio State, it's Oregon. Flip a coin. It's probably one of the two that's going to win it.
Mm-hmm.
But Happy Valley is possible. I cannot stress to you how important that game is to Indiana football. If they somehow win that game, you know how much it changes recruiting, because not only is it a power and all that, and a Big Ten team, it's in an area that's accessible because it's 2 states away, and they already have a base in Virginia, Maryland, and they're used to. That would be you need to win a game on the field that everybody goes, wait a minute. They got killed by Ohio State and Notre Dame last year. They just beat Penn State in Happy Valley.
Mm-hmm.
They need something like that to take that next step. Now, even with where they are, I think they can get some 4-star kids. Don't be surprised if they flip somebody, etc. But how Curt wants to do it with the culture, I don't know. Because a lot of the kids they might want or have a chance at, does it fit? You got to be very careful. Ironically, I saw a clip from James Franklin. He was being interviewed by somebody. He brought up a great point. He said, you cannot be intoxicated by the talent. Great line. What's the kid like? What's his tardies like? Does he go to school? Is he respectful? This and that.
I got you. Yeah.
You can't
be blind.
Idiots.
Yeah.
You can't take idiots. That's how you go into the toilet real quick.
Right.
Because those kids won't last. You think playing for Cignetti is easy? Probably not. Those guys aren't going to last under him because he wants discipline. So there's a balance. But over the next 2 years, You got to get to the point where taking a 4-star kid is mundane. That's the objective.
I want to ask you about a kid who was on campus 2 weeks ago, or I guess a week or so ago, when Indiana hosted Illinois. Indiana blasted Illinois. It's the 5-star defensive lineman from Texas, Jalen Brewster. He was on campus. Indiana's in the mix, and he makes his verbal commitment this coming week on October the 4th. That is on Thursday of this week. I know that it's a long shot for Indiana to pull this off because it would be an upset. If FanDuel had an odds, it would be a major upset here. It would be an underdog, if you will. But the fact that Indiana is A, in this, Brian, and B, somewhat has a shot, I think is pretty remarkable. Can they pull this off?
I doubt they will, but I didn't think they were going to get a visit. This was so wild. I don't have a precedent to put it against.
Sure.
So 2 points here. I have no idea where he's going, first off, but the 2 points are you got him on campus and you've got a connection into Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
He plays at one of the big hubs down in, I think it's Cedar Hill Kill, which is a major program. That's a great sign. And number 2, he wouldn't have put you on the list for his finalists if he thought the visit sucked. So they did something right besides win by 53. Kids look at visits like this. How would I fit in? How do they treat me? How do they treat my mom or blah, blah, blah? Whoever came with him, his coaches, his 700, his trainer, whatever. They did something right to be in the mix, and they did something right to stay on the list. I'm actually more interested in that, as goofy as it sounds, than them getting him, because there's always a chance there was just some kind of inside deal there. But he's a Texas kid. That's not Cignetti's ground. That's not his turf. Again, I don't know where he's going. But the fact they're even in on a 5-star D lineman at this juncture is insane. When I first saw that, I had to read it twice because I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Because this is a Texas, LSU, Oklahoma kind of battle thing. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That just shows you where Indiana's come in about 12 months. One of the fastest rises I've ever seen.
Well, I think it shows for people who maybe doubt Indiana as a program or doubt Curt Cignetti as a recruiter or just doubt Indiana's NIL revenue sharing idea. Because, look, for a 5-star defensive lineman, it's a bidding war in today's world, right, Brian?
Yes,
I mean, it's who can pay the most at the end of the day, who can give you the most, pay the most, and play the most. It's all about how much can you pay me and how much can you play me. That's what I always talk about. And I think this should give people an idea that Indiana can at least come to the table with an offer that won't get laughed at, right? I mean, these used to be deals that were made on or off the books that Indiana just they wouldn't even put the paper on the table because they knew they couldn't hang. This should show people that Indiana can. And if you keep winning games and the university keeps putting money into it and donors keep putting money into this too, Indiana's a sleeping giant in recruiting, Brian. I think you believe that, don't you?
I don't see how they couldn't be based on who they've had on campus recently. You had a 5-star D lineman on campus. You had Montrezl Sales on campus. They're starting to get kids on campus at Penn State, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Southern Cal went on campus. That's about as straightforward as it gets. And they're doing it out of state. They're doing it in state. They're doing it at critical, like D linemen from Dallas. Everybody recruits Dallas. It's a top 5 city in the country for high school football. This is a wild deal, man. I would, if I was Cignetti, I'd do everything I can over the next couple of weeks before they play Oregon, do everything I can to get kids aware of what's going on and the long-term vision. Why not Indiana? They got, like you said, I don't think a lot of people know that Indiana's got legit NIL money. I don't think they know that.
Can I ask you something about kids coming on visits? And nowadays, a guy like a Jalen Brewster, who's 5-star, could go anywhere, make whatever money. Is it true that big recruits like that have to know that the school they want to go visit can afford them? Like Indiana, for example. Would Brewster even come and visit IU if he knew that they couldn't stroke the check to compete with the other programs? Because that would be a waste of time, right?
Most of the kids kind of have an idea, but it's the adults in the room that make those decisions.
And
the
agents nowadays.
Yeah, it depends on the family situation.
Sure.
But there's usually somebody with a kid like that is handling, because he's such a big name.
Mm-hmm.
They know. So he doesn't have to worry about it. So the question's really, do the people involved with him know what the deal is? And they would, or they wouldn't fly all the way from there. Why would you waste your time?
Yeah.
They could have went to Ole Miss LSU. They could have went to a lot of other games that weekend. You know what I mean? Like there's different things going on every weekend. that
which
they're
shows you that Indiana can hang. That's my point in
Yes.
this whole conversation. And now you got to build on it. And now you can do so with a win against Oregon, a win against Penn State, win the games you're supposed to, getting back to the college football playoff. All of those are things for Indiana to continue to build its stature on the recruiting trail, in the transfer portal, and in college football.